They thought they were humiliating her. When the family gathered for the inheritance, everyone expected a fortune. But for her, the black daughter-in-law, they saved the cruelest gift. They laughed as they handed her the keys to a house no one wanted. Broken windows, collapsing walls, weeds taller than people. This place was nothing but a curse in their eyes. "Here," they sneered. "Since you're used to cleaning, maybe you can clean this wreck too." The room echoed with laughter, and she felt the sting of their mockery. What they didn't know was that behind the dust, rot, and shadows of that house lay a secret worth more than gold itself. Naomi had married into the Whitaker family years ago, and from the very beginning, she knew she was not truly welcomed. They reminded her constantly that she didn't belong, that she was an outsider, both because of her race and her humble upbringing. Her husband, Daniel, had been the only shield between her and their cruelty. But when he passed unexpectedly, that shield was gone, and Naomi and her young son, Elijah, were left vulnerable to the scorn of the family. The day of the inheritance had been her last shred of hope. She had prayed that maybe, just maybe, Daniel had left behind something, anything, that could give her and Elijah a stable future. Instead, she had been handed the deed to what looked like a ruin. The Whitakers chuckled as they slipped the old rusted keys into her hand, whispering to one another how fitting it was that the cleaning woman now owned the dirtiest place in town. When Naomi and Elijah arrived at the house, even her heart sank. The roof sagged in the middle like it was ready to cave in. The paint had long since peeled away, leaving the wood exposed to years of rain and rot. Broken shutters dangled loosely, and ivy crept like veins across the walls. Elijah looked up at his mother with wide, uncertain eyes. "Mom, are we really going to live here?" Naomi forced a smile, though her heart trembled. "We will make it work, baby. We always do." But behind her determination was fear. She had no money to fix a place like this, no family to lean on, and no friends willing to help. It felt like yet another cruel test life had thrown at her. Still, she refused to break. For Elijah's sake, she gathered what little strength she had. Day by day, Naomi began clearing out the overgrown weeds, patching holes with whatever scraps she could find, scrubbing the dirt-stained floors until her hands blistered. She sold baked goods in the market, took up extra shifts at the diner, and every spare dollar went into slowly bringing the abandoned house back to life. And yet, the Whitakers didn't stop laughing. Whenever they passed by, they sneered from their shiny cars. "How's the palace coming along?" they'd mock. "Careful, Naomi, don't let the walls crush you while you sleep." But Naomi stayed silent. She knew words were wasted on people blinded by arrogance. All she had was her faith, her perseverance, and the unshakable love she carried for her son. Then, one evening, as she was cleaning out a dark, cluttered storage room deep inside the house, something unusual caught her eye. Behind an old wardrobe, hidden by layers of dust, was a small trapdoor leading down into a narrow cellar. Naomi hesitated, her hands trembling as she pulled it open. She expected nothing but cobwebs and maybe rats. But what she saw instead made her heart stop. The narrow cellar smelled of earth and age, but the deeper Naomi stepped, the clearer it became that this was no ordinary storage. Wooden beams gave way to a chamber, its walls lined with strange carvings and markings that had been hidden for decades. At the far end, behind a pile of rotting crates, she noticed something glimmering faintly in the light of her lantern. Her breath caught as she brushed away the dust. Inside the crates were bars of gold, stacked neatly, untouched, as if waiting for someone worthy enough to find them. Naomi fell to her knees, her hands trembling as she lifted one. It was heavy, solid, undeniable. Her mind spun with disbelief. Could it be real? She rushed upstairs, searching for any sign that this was some elaborate trick. But when she returned and struck the bar gently against stone, The dull, rich thud told her the truth. It was gold, not just a little, but a fortune, enough to change her and Elijah's lives forever. That night, Naomi barely slept. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at the bar of gold in front of her, thinking about all the years of humiliation, of being laughed at, of being told she didn't belong. She thought about the Whitakers, about how they had handed her this house as a joke, believing it was worthless. But now, the joke was Naomi carefully arranged everything. She reached out to professionals, discreetly, ensuring the gold was verified and legally tied to the property she now owned. Each step was nerve-wracking, but each confirmation filled her with new strength. For the first time in years, she wasn't surviving. She was building a future. When the Whitaker family finally came around again, driving by to gloat, they were in for a shock. Where once stood a collapsing wreck, now rose a beautifully restored home, its windows gleaming, its garden alive with color, and its walls freshly painted in warm, welcoming tones. They slowed their cars, jaws dropping, as Naomi stepped out onto the porch in a neat dress, Elijah at her side, both of them smiling with a quiet dignity. One of the in-laws sneered, forcing a laugh. "Well, well, looks like you've managed to polish up the ruins. Must have cost you every dime you had." Naomi tilted her head slightly, her smile never faltering. "Oh, it cost me something," she said softly, "but what it gave back is priceless." The family exchanged confused looks. They still thought she had somehow begged or borrowed to make it happen. But the truth was far beyond their imagination. Months later, when news quietly spread through town that Naomi had become one of the wealthiest women in the county, the Whitakers couldn't believe their ears. They had thrown her what they thought was a curse, only to discover it had been a treasure all along. But Naomi didn't waste her time gloating. She used her newfound wealth wisely, investing in her son's education, supporting community programs, and restoring other abandoned homes for struggling families. One evening, as she and Elijah sat together on the porch, watching the sunset, her son leaned against her shoulder and whispered, "Mom, do you think Dad can see us now?" Naomi's eyes filled with tears, but they were no longer tears of sorrow. They were tears of triumph. "Yes, baby," she said softly, "and I think he's proud." The abandoned house that was meant to humiliate her had become the very foundation of her strength, her dignity, and her legacy. And the family that had mocked her would never forget the day their cruelty turned into her golden victory.